Hi everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. We'll give some folks a few more moments to get to join and get settled. All right, I think it's go time. My name is Bob Buchanan, and I am the Executive Vice President of Sales for Rapid Scale. With me today is our Senior Product Manager, Robert Bergman. Robert, you there?
I sure am.
Hey man, thanks for joining us today. Exciting topic. We were gonna be joined as well by John Reinhardt, who leads our client experience team, which that's the team that contains all Rapid Scale's account managers supporting obviously our customers. Unfortunately, John wasn't here to be with us, but I think you and I can handle it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So today, the world's obviously. Today, the world's obviously in a real point of disruption as it pertains to the impact of COVID. And I can tell you that we have been impacted just like everyone else. And our workers, our teams, our support teams, our sales teams, we're all being forced to work from home. And I know that you and I have been talking about, hey, how do we get that message out that would be educational in a manner that would help our clients understand how to leverage the power of Microsoft Teams. I know a lot of folks probably either have Office 365, or maybe they're on Hosted Exchange, or maybe they have an EA, right? Regardless of what your current circumstance is, you may be underutilizing Teams to its full extent. And we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the market trends and how you might be able to leverage the tool to maximize productivity. So just a house cleaning item. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will send out the recording within the next 24 hours. And if you certainly have questions, we'd love an opportunity to answer them. Please use the chat feature, and we'll get those answered at the end. So, just from a macro view, what's actually happening, right? I know Twitter recently announced that employees can work from home permanently, and here you can see CIO Journal referencing many other companies are going to be thinking the same thing. Facebook's expecting a significant work from home type initiative over the next 10 years. And, I just read an article out of Gartner, I believe, that 74% of all CFOs are looking at significantly modifying their work from home policies. From a trend standpoint, you mentioned the article there mentioned Zoom and also Teams. Zoom, I think in December of 2019 had 10 million daily subscribers. That today is well over 300 million, which is incredible. Obviously today we're focused on Teams for obvious reasons. We believe at Rapid Scale that while Zoom's a nice product, Teams is built a little bit more for the enterprise. Teams has also experienced significant growth. In April alone, 75 million subscribers on Teams. That's a $31 million subscriber increase in a 1 month period of time. Just absolutely phenomenal, really unbelievable. So some additional statistics, and we'll get into the meat of it. But if you think about the impact of working from home, right? COVID really has been the world's largest experiment. It is the compelling event that's really forcing us to work in new ways. If you look at 2012, for example, 39% of U.S. employees were working from home in some capacity, and then you fast forward to April, 62%. I won't read all of these for you. I think you can see, but if you look at the collaboration piece, 80% of the employees' time is spent collaborating. Teams is an excellent tool to ensure that your employees are able to continue to collaborate and communicate very effectively. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it back over to Robert for the meat of the educational session, and look forward to the Q&A at the end. Robert, it's all yours.
Thanks, Bob. So finding the right tools to enable workers to collaborate and engage can be challenging when you think about all the things we have in your typical office that we have to replace now. So conference rooms, desk phones, whiteboards, face-to-face meetings in the hallways. We have to virtually replace that, but do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm workers and provide them with prevent them having to use multiple tools, provide a consolidated tool. Microsoft did a study that found there were 4 core things you have to tackle to really engage remote workers. Number 1, we need the ability to virtually bring workers together and allow teams to collaborate, whether it's via phone or chat or just sharing information on a real-time basis. Number 2, we have to enable workers to use any device anywhere to collaborate. And this really starts to get into driving a bring your own device strategy where users can leverage personal devices for work purposes and work from anywhere. Thirdly, we have to connect not just internal employees, but also external parties like customers and vendors and partners. And lastly, we have to really effectively replace that face-to-face meeting experience in a virtual sense that still feels personal. So Microsoft really developed teams to achieve all these goals from a single easy-to-use tool. And they offer not just the ability to create scheduled and ad hoc meetings via phone and web, but also instant messaging chat and some collaboration with Teams channels for internal and external folks that we'll get into in the subsequent slides. One of the things we hear from customers pretty frequently are questions around, where does Teams fit with email and SharePoint and other Microsoft tools in the collaboration ecosystem? And it's a good question because Microsoft's released a lot of tools within Office 365, and there definitely is some perceived overlap between them. The way Microsoft recommends looking at this is pretty well summed up here. This was actually released about 1.5 years ago at one of their conferences. Microsoft breaks out collaboration and communication into 2 virtual loops. So there's an inner loop that includes people you work with frequently, and an outer loop that's more one-way communication, less frequent with a much wider audience. That inner loop can include both internal and external people, so it can be employees and customers and partners and vendors and agents. The communication and collaboration in that inner loop needs to happen pretty seamlessly and pretty frequently in order to be really effective. So that can include that chat we talked about, the meetings, the phone calls, collaborating, whiteboarding, and Microsoft Teams facilitates all of that. When you look at the other side, Microsoft's really positioned Yammer as a tool for the outer loop. So you won't use Teams to post like external organizational announcements, internal company-wide communication, or give employees a place to post, organization-wide messages like a bulletin board. Yammer is really the right tool for that. In the middle there, Teams works very closely in the back end with SharePoint and OneDrive to enable the sharing of documents and spreadsheets and presentations and enable real-time editing, which we'll get into in a moment. And then underlying all of this, obviously, is Microsoft Outlook and email, which is really more specifically targeted for communication with 1 or 2 people you find in a typical email thread. So let's get into how Teams helps us collaborate and communicate with that inner loop. Teams collaboration includes 3 key features: the ability to have instant messaging chats with internal and external folks, sharing documents and co-authoring them real time, and creating what Teams calls channels, which enables people to share information more effectively and more visibly. You can install the Teams app on your PC, or you can grab it from the Google Play Store for your Android or from the App Store for your iPhone. It really is the same experience regardless of which form factor you use. Let's look at the features in more detail. So I'll give you an example rather than read all this. We use Teams here at RapidScale pretty aggressively. I actually work remotely out of Massachusetts, and my boss works out of Oklahoma. I work with the entire US sales team, and I work with folks in Raleigh on our operations team and our sales and marketing folks in Irvine. So I'm in Teams chats all day long as people get a hold of me to ask questions or get clarification on things. My boss and I will frequently edit some product-related documents like spreadsheets and presentations and such, and we do it via Teams. So actually, when we're done, we've worked together very collaboratively as if we're actually in an office, and it's a much better product than you would get just having people disparately on their own kind of edit documents. Once we're done, we can share that out with the organization via SharePoint. That gets back to the inner versus outer loop. I'm also in a number of Teams channels where we really closely collaborate and communicate on a team basis. So as an example, anytime we make an update to our product catalog, I have to go out to the Teams channel and basically post what we did and why we did it, and a bunch of different information around that. It's going to be consumed by development and by sales and by our engineers. And it really enables people to look at that whole thread if they weren't involved in the conversation and understand very intuitively and very quickly where the conversation went, what the points were, and kind of how we ended up. If you try to do that via email, I'm sure you'll all have this experience, it becomes very fragmented. Even with a threading feature in Outlook, it becomes very fragmented and very difficult to kind of reconstruct that conversation. So doing that in Teams and being able to post screenshots and make reference to files and post links in there provides a much better collaboration experience. If you're working with external partners and they use Office 365, as several do, they're going to also have Azure Active Directory. So we can help you integrate their identities in Azure AD with your Teams instance via a process called federation. And what that basically does, it provides the ability for external people to collaborate using Teams the same way and with your internal folks, but you can also control the security around that. You can control it via groups, and you can control it via access lists, and make sure that external entities are only participating in the channels you want them to be in, and doing it in a way that you want them to do with certain access and such. Teams will also let you hold web meetings such as this, and you can hold these with up to 10,000 participants, internally and externally. You can record these via later playback via a product called Microsoft Stream that's very tightly integrated with Teams. And you can distribute that recording very simply via a link to both external and internal users. Your participants can join via web conferencing on their PC or phone. We'll talk about that more in a bit. One of the really cool things with Teams that I think a lot of people aren't aware of is the virtual whiteboard. So it really starts to replace that in-office collaboration experience. We use it very frequently here if we're designing a new service or talking about a product architecture. It's way easier just to be able to graphically see things and draw together versus just talking about it. Teams also has a feature called live meeting. We're actually in one right now. So it's more of a broadcast that allows for participant Q&A, and you can actually granularly define the producer, presenter, and attendee roles, and use Teams not just for collaboration, but also for things like webinars and training workshops and such. As Bob mentioned, there was a lot of growth across all web conferencing collaboration tools with COVID. When the COVID stay-at-home order started coming out in mid-March, Microsoft saw growth in Teams meetings by over 500% in 19 days, which is tremendous. Teams is able to handle this volume pretty seamlessly. It's based on Microsoft Azure on the back end, which is highly scalable. It was also around this time there was a couple security vulnerabilities that were highly publicized with some other web conferencing tools. Team security is back-ended by Azure Active Directory, and it offers features like single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, encryption, et cetera, and it really helps avoid and mitigate those security issues. Microsoft uses a very agile development process, so they release new features for Teams every couple of weeks. Some of the more recently released features includes things like background blurring, custom backgrounds, the ability to raise your hand virtually in a meeting. They've got really good background noise suppression. I was actually presenting to our West Coast team last week and had a fully operating wood chipper about 80 feet from my front door, and they couldn't hear a thing. So noise suppression's gotten very, very good with Teams. And Microsoft's going to continue to aggressively release new features for Teams to compete favorably with Zoom or WebEx and GoToMeeting and such. And they're going to continue to enhance what's already a very scalable and very secure platform. Teams integrates with a number of other Microsoft products as well to deliver a very comprehensive voice solution. So you can make Teams calls directly to other Teams users that are in your Active Directory, and you can also extend that out to those external federated users. Regarding meetings, most users will join via their PC, but you can also extend meetings out to phone participants via something called Microsoft Auto Conferencing, which very tightly integrates with Teams as well. You can also integrate Teams with cloud-based PBX called Microsoft Phone System and leverage Microsoft calling plans to enable Teams users to make outbound calls to phone numbers and receive inbound calls exactly as they would with a desk phone. It basically turns Teams into a fully functioning soft phone. The Microsoft Phone System is basically a cloud-based PBX that includes things like auto attendant and call routing, queues and voicemails, all the features you find in your traditional on-site PBX. And all of it's very tightly integrated with Teams and supports compatible desk phones to work with Teams and the cloud-based PBX as well. The calling plans cover both domestic and international calling, and they really provide pooled minutes that can be used throughout Teams users in your entire organization. So today you're probably using a couple different web conferencing tools like Zoom and WebEx. You probably have some auto conferencing attached to that. Maybe you're using SharePoint, a couple other technologies for internal collaboration, and Skype or Slack for instant messaging. So you've got tools for collaboration and worker engagement, but they're very fragmented, and there isn't really a single repository of information that you can refer to for any given project or initiative. There's probably some confusion among users around where they can go for information, a single source of known good information. Teams can really solve for all of this if it's properly rolled out. So the way we usually recommend doing this is to start by deploying tools that can solve that fragmentation issue. Get rid of the multiple web conferencing tools, the multiple auto conferencing tools. Roll out Teams chat for internal and external instant messaging to start with, and control that access via Azure Active Directory. and start to really get users accustomed to using Teams for chat. That's the easiest feature to promote and for users to consume. Secondly, you can set a very clear and communicate a very clear end date for the other web conferencing tools using, like Zoom and WebEx and Slack and such, and force those users to try Teams and see how easy it is to work with. And then you can kind of default to asking people to join meetings from their PC and set up auto conferencing within Teams for only the users that really need it for external folks. And really start the second kind of tier here, using them for meetings. Thirdly, and this is a little more difficult, but it's really a powerful part of this, you want to start using and promoting Teams channels. And really the best way to do this that I've found is to find an IT project that touches other departments and establish a Teams channel for that. You really have to make that Teams channel kind of the central repository for all project resources and all project communication, and then use that experience to establish some best practices you can share with other departments. And you start offering Teams channels to other departments that have projects that touch your IT department, and you can work to gain internal mind share so that people get in the habit of checking Teams for information first before checking other tools. As Teams becomes more ubiquitous in an organization, customers tend to go in one of two directions. Either they start looking to replace their existing cloud-based or on-premise PBX with a cloud-based Microsoft phone system and use Microsoft calling plans with a Teams phone client, or they start looking at applications that can integrate with Teams channels to keep people in that Teams experience throughout the whole day. So a good example is integrating Salesforce with Teams, so you can use Salesforce functionality within the Teams client without having to go out to your web browser and actually launch Teams and log into it. Two very important concepts at the bottom here. Number one, user education. Teams is pretty easy to use, but having a user education plan can really help drive Teams adoption more quickly. There's several online tools out there that offer some training videos for Office 365 and Teams specifically. Using these will help get users much more productive with Teams way more quickly. The other concept to promote is mobile use of Teams, as well as the PC-based Teams client. It really starts to get back to the concept of enabling workers to work anywhere, anytime, and any device. That Teams user experience really is the same on the mobile device as it is on the PC, and promoting that can really help drive more adoption and more usage. So I won't go through all of this here. We're going to send out a copy of this so you guys can peruse it. But suffice to say, when it's properly rolled out and accepted by the user base, Teams becomes a very, very integral, important part of their daily communication and collaboration. It's a bit of a culture change to start using Teams this way, but when you do, you're really going to find that remote workers and workers in your office too are a lot more effective and a lot more engaged. So there's two different versions of Microsoft Teams. Microsoft makes a free version available for businesses with up to 300 users, but that really only includes the chat and basic channel functionality and person-to-person calling. Your channel functionality is really limited to 1 GB per user, so you can't get the full use of the product in that sense. It's great for a quick trial if you want to kick the tires, but it's not something you're really going to use to replace any of your fragmented tools or your Zoom and WebEx and Slack and other such things. The paid version of Teams is the full product. It's actually not sold on its own, but it's included in several Office 365 plans, which we'll get into right here. So RapidScale is a gold Microsoft CSP partner. We sell Microsoft 365 and Office 365 licensing and services. We include 24/7 end user and IT admin support, managed configuration, and we include that online user adoption that I talked about a few slides ago. If you think about how important that user education is to driving Teams adoption, we actually include those online Teams training tools with every single seat of Office. Microsoft's included that full paid Teams version in all their email-enabled plans you see here, except for Exchange Online Plan 1 and Plan 2. So if you're using those very base email plans, you're going to need to upgrade to one of the plans here to be able to take full advantage of Teams. Also, kind of an FYI, Microsoft recently renamed 3 of their Office products that were Office 365 business products as Microsoft 365 business products. So what used to be Office 365 Business Essentials is now Business Basic. The former Business Premium is now Business Standard, and the former Microsoft 365 Business Bundle that included not just Yammer and Teams and Outlook and Word and Excel and PowerPoint, but also Windows 10 and EMS. That's now called Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So they've done a little rename there. It's all reflected here. But if you buy any of these, you get the full service suite from us. You get the online user adoption, and you get the full version of Teams. You can take full advantage of that. And that concludes the presentation we had today. I want to leave some time for, obviously, for Q&A and if anybody had any questions or anything. Bob, anything from you?
I can chime in with the first question.
Sure.
How are organizations migrating from Skype to Teams, given that Microsoft has largely replaced Skype functionality with Teams?
Good question. So what they're basically doing is just forcing users to start using Teams for that chat functionality. It gets a little more complex if they're using some voice functionality. We've got to kind of run a project to implement that Microsoft phone system and be able to roll that out and replace like for like there. But the chat functionality in Teams is very intuitive and looks and feels a lot like the Skype functionality did. So it's pretty much a one-for-one replacement. And I haven't seen any customers really struggle with that. They've been very successful in getting that rolled out.
Okay. Can I leverage my existing investment in PSTN to make Teams work with my existing carrier?
Yeah, another good question. So there's a feature called direct routing within Microsoft that lets you basically use the Microsoft phone system to connect with the carrier plan or the carrier circuits that you already have. So you don't have to buy those Microsoft calling plans. You can actually leverage Teams and leverage that whole Microsoft Cloud PBX experience with your existing investment in PSTN and not have to skew that all together and replace that with the calling plans. So Microsoft was smart in that they wanted to make us flexible and give customers who already had existing investments in carriers, give them some options.
All right. Next up, do you offer any type of demo environment?
Yeah, Robert, you know what? I'll take that one. I
Okay.
mean, we do, and we actually even contemplated doing it on this session, but the short answer is this: if you reach out to your rapid scale sales rep or account manager, we'll schedule something for you, and walk you through an in-depth session on how to use it, depending on what you're looking for from a functionality standpoint. So that won't be a problem at all. We could also at the same time give you a demo of the rapid scale customer portal, which has a lot of benefits as well, especially if you subscribe to Office 365 with us as a customer. You'll be able to really get a better grasp of how you can leverage the full breadth of services, but also track user count, add users, remove users, etc. So yeah, if you reach out to us, we'll be happy to schedule that for you.
Awesome. This one just came in. What if we are on ShareFile? Is there any functionality there, and do you recommend migrating to SharePoint?
Great question. So Citrix ShareFile, what you're going to do in that scenario is, if you look at the Microsoft Teams channels that you have, there's an ability to post files within there and be able to share that in the context of a larger communication, like a project-driven or initiative-driven communication within that Teams channel. When you post files to there, you're actually posting files to Microsoft OneDrive. So you can separately access those from your PC if you wanted to, because Windows 10 operating system integrates very tightly with OneDrive. So what I've seen customers do is two things. One, they've posted those files to either SharePoint, or if they're general kind of files, or if they're specific to a conversation or initiative they're working on, they actually take those files from ShareFile and they post them over to the respective Microsoft Teams channel. And then the users can go ahead and do a couple things. One, they can leverage information in those files within the Teams channel, within the context of a conversation. Two, it gives them the ability to really collaboratively work on those documents together. We do this a lot within my team. We will open up a PowerPoint presentation and I'll be working on one slide. My boss is working on a different one. We have another coworker working on a spreadsheet that's going to slide into one of the slides. And it's nice in that you can get a lot more done in an hour than you would working separately and having to work to bring things together afterwards. So definitely recommend you explore the file functionality within the Teams channels.
Awesome. And this one kind of ties into the demo question, but is more about education. I need to help my company learn how to use Teams. Do you have training available?
Yeah, absolutely. So every seat of Office 365 that we sell, it also includes Teams. We also bundle in our user adoption training videos from a company called Nulio that we partner with. And there's 30 or 40 different modules you can choose from. We include 2 with every seat. One of them is always a Teams module, and the other one is a basic Office 365 module. So what it basically does, it walks users through how to get used to Teams, how to log in, navigationally, how to click around and kind of what channels are versus chat versus calling. And then there's some additional videos you can purchase. It's very, very affordable, that walk you through more of the advanced features and really start to dive into some of the subversive, different Teams features.
Robert, we use that tool internally, and what I've noticed is it's got some level of intelligence where it'll send me an email saying, I've noticed that you just completed X task. You could have done this more efficiently, and I may be not articulating that as well, but I've seen that, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, it's very tightly integrated with Office 365 via API. So it's not monitoring what you're doing, but it's aware of what you're doing in certain products, and it can interactively pop up and say, hey, as Bob alluded to, I can help you do this more effectively. It also, right. if you're struggling with a feature and you're trying to do something and you're kind of in that feature for a while, it can pick up on that and actually prompt you to watch a video that makes you much more productive.
Awesome. What is the minimum amount of users required if we want to move to Teams?
It's actually the minimum that we have for Office 365, which, Bob, keep me honest here, I believe it's 25 seats. Is that right?
Yeah, we have some smaller packages, but yeah, that's right around the minimum 25.
Awesome. That is the last question I see in the panel right now.
I have a question for you, Robert. It's along those same lines. You talk about the minimums. There was the previous slide said maximum users was 300. What happens if I have more than over 300 users?
At that point, you have to move to that reference to 300 was really for the free Teams application you can download from the Microsoft Store. What I've seen customers do is maybe whether they have 10 seats or 1,000 seats, I've seen them download the free client and click around and get used to it.
Okay.
And then they almost always want to convert to a full Office 365 plan to get the full functionality.
Thanks for that point of clarification.
Sure.
You have a voice for radio. You sure you weren't a disc jockey at one point?
No.
Well, folks, I think in summary, I'll ask: is that all the questions?
Yep, that's all of them.
We are so appreciative for you joining us today. Like I said at the beginning, we'll get this out to you via email, so you'll have the recording. And if anything that we said today, you want to dive deeper, or you want to learn how you might be able to consume these technologies with the help of RapidScale, as I mentioned earlier, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Reach out to your sales rep, reach out to your account manager. We'd be happy to engage. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe and have a great rest of the week.